Welcome back to Econline, everybody. In this video, we're going to look more at inflation rates, so how to calculate them. And in order to do that, we're going to have to start off by calculating what we call the Consumer Price Index scores, or a CPI score. As we looked at in other videos, the CPI is just a measure that allows us to look at price changes from year to year. So the numbers that we're going to generate in this example themselves aren't really going to have a whole lot of meaning, but as we look at how those numbers change over time, that's where we're going to get our value from the CPI. Calculating CPI scores is not a very difficult process. The formula itself is pretty simple. You're going to take the price that the basket sells for in a given year. So in this case, if we look at the year 2007, the basket sells for $1,456. So the formula will be, so the price of the basket, and I'm just going to put year XX, and that's just going to be any year that we're trying to calculate the CPI score for. And that's going to be divided by the price of the basket in the base year. Now the base year is just kind of our year that we'll use for comparison. Anytime a base year is chosen, it's just arbitrary or random. You can pick any year. It doesn't really matter which one. We'll look at some more advanced stuff with base years and how that'll change some of these numbers later on. But for now, we're just going to choose a base year for our example of 2010. So this is going to be our base year. So if we were going to set up this formula, sorry, there's one more part to it. So it's going to be the price in the basket over the price of the basket in the base year times 100. And that's going to give us what we call a CPI score. And I'll put CPI XX because it's going to give us the score for this year that we're starting with. All right, so suppose we wanted to find the CPI score for the year 2007. Take a second to pause this video and see if you can set up the formula. And once you have the formula set up, before you solve it, go ahead and unpause it and see if you've got it right. All right, so let's go ahead and solve this problem. So our basket price in 2007, as we looked at before, is $1,456. And we're going to divide that by the price of the basket in the base year of $1,800 and multiply that number times 100. The answer that you should get when you calculate this out is 80.89. And that is going to be the CPI score for the year 2007. So we'll do that CPI 07. And that's basically all there is to calculating a CPI score. Before moving on to the next video, take a second to calculate the CPI for each of these. Now keep in mind that as you calculate them, what you're going to do is you'll take the price in the basket year as your numerator, but the base year will always be the denominator. So as long as, in this example, as long as our base year is still 2010, then the denominator that you're always going to set up for this is always going to be 1800. So you'd have like 1456 divided by 1800, 1597 divided by 1800, 1741 divided by 1800, 1800 divided by 1800, and so on. Now before we move on from that to the next point, that idea about the CPI score in the base year is worth special attention. By default, the CPI score in the base year is always going to be 100. And let's take a look at why that's the case. If you take the price of the basket in the year that we're looking at, which is 2010, the price is 1800. If you look at the price of that basket in the base year, it's also 1800 times 100. And I think from there you can figure out why the CPI score is always going to be 100 during the base year. Now, it doesn't matter, again, which base year you choose, but it will affect the CPI scores. Again, that'll be a subject for another video. After you've had a minute to go ahead and calculate these, go on to the next video where we'll look at actually determining the inflation rate from the CPI scores that we've generated.